years go by so very rapidly, don't they? I'm sure a little emotional for Mom and Dad to look at those pictures and contemplate all those years. We had, of course, another wonderful year of Sabbath school, we mentioned before, and now a very important teen milestone, a high school diploma, graduating, kind of ushering in the next stage of life, actually fully entering the adult world in many ways. So a big step for them, and congratulations to everyone. And it was referred to earlier, we have many babies on the way, many young children also being taught, and also by families and parents, and a part of families. And coming up another week, a preteen camp for their experiences. And sometimes it's a very big step for some of our younger kids to be dropped off by mom or dad at 6 or 7, 8, and be gone for 3 or 4 days, and mom and dad leaving is a little bit of a challenge at times, and coming back as they begin to progress and begin to grow. But what's the purpose of it all? I mean, what's it all for? What are we trying to do? How's it supposed to work as far as an overall framework? What are we trying to accomplish? Well, let's go to Malachi chapter 2 and begin considering a few thoughts here this afternoon. Malachi chapter 2, verse 14 and 15. God was telling ancient Israel about things that had happened to them and why all their expectations were not being met. And they kind of asked God, well, what have we done? And so in verse 14 of Malachi chapter 2, you're going to say, well, why? What's happening here? What did we do wrong? He says, well, one of the reasons is because the Lord has been witness between you and the wife of your youth. There's one reason. Against whom you've dealt treacherously. Yet is she your companion and the wife of your covenant. Well, how's that important relationship? How are we treating each other? And didn't he make them one flesh? We'll read in a few moments. Aren't they to be one? You're not acting like that. Yet he had the residue of the Spirit. And why did he make one? What's one of the main reasons? That he might seek a godly seed. A godly seed. Therefore, take heed to your spirit. Let none deal treacherously against the wife of your youth. Protect that marriage union. Realize that you're one, and realize there's a godly purpose behind it, especially if it involves children. They're to be a godly child. What does that mean? How does that work? We're going to have the right kind of kids. Fundamentally, what it means, the right kind of young children. A life that they learn to base upon the plan, the way of God, as opposed to whatever the world's doing, whatever's popular, whatever's our culture. That's what they did in Canaan. A life based on the plan of God, certain spiritual values. There's spiritual truths and reality, and they're learning those at a very early age. Learn about faith. What about Hebrews 11:6? This is important for all of us to remember. Hebrews 11:6. It says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. Is there a God? Is he here? Does it matter? Does he care? Without faith, it's impossible to please God. For whosoever comes to him has to believe God exists. There's a God out there. God exists. And he rewards those who diligently search for him. It makes a difference. What we do, how we act, what our heart is, what our attitude is. Makes a big difference. There's a God. We believe in that. We have a faith in that. We teach that to our children. Oh, well, you can't direct your children. That's often, the philosophy. Well, I'm not going to try to influence the children. I'm going to let them grow up and make their own decision. Well, that's fine. You do let them grow up and make their own decision. Can't make it for them, but you're going to instruct them in the way you feel is right. And besides, we have certain family values. We do certain things in our home. We don't do other things. So if they don't want to embrace them when they're old enough, well, that's their choice. You can't force that. But we're going to teach them as opposed to, well, back away, and when they get old enough, then they can decide. They're kind of late. Not the way to have a godly seed. If there's evolution, of course, there's no such thing as a godly seed. Well, just here by accident, when it's over, it's over. Not according to God in the Scriptures. Well, we all know it starts with the parents. Let's read Genesis 2 once again, verse 24. Starts with the parents. How do you have this godly seed? Well, you have to start there. And the Growing Kids God's Way program, that's where they started. Hey, we got to get this working team on the same page. They have a role, they have a responsibility. That comes first. The children realize that's the important thing in our home. Not the children first. It's mom and dad, who's head of the home. Genesis 2, verse 24. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, will cleave unto his wife, they become one flesh, one unit. What God designed. There's something godly and spiritual about the relationship, a husband and a wife, and the intimacy and all that relationship means. So they're both equal in God's sight. That's not the issue. They're both equal, but there's different roles, different duties, you might say, created at different times to underscore the difference in the purpose and the role and the intent and what God expects. God creates family life. It didn't evolve and we kind of came together and came up with this union and arrangement, and now maybe it's time to get rid of it. Kind of the way some think. It's an institution of marriage. There are laws that govern that union. Important building block of society. So it starts with the parents, their relationship, their understanding. That's why we say be equally yoked, be able to be on the same page with your mate, be compatible, hopefully share the same values, same approach to having a godly seed. Then, of course, the children, Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 2. Children, Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 2. Starts with the parents. And we're talking about families primarily with children. Obviously, the marriage institution is sacred, whether there's children or not, because it pictures Christ in the church. It completes both couples, whether there are children or not. But in most cases, there are children. So the parents are the foundation, the building block. Then come along the children. And the children are told in Ephesians 6 and verse 2, honor your father and mother, which used to be one of the commandments. Well, it doesn't sound like they're done away with here in the New Testament. Sounds like it's still a commandment. Paul's talking as though it is. Doesn't look like the law of God's abolished. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long upon the earth. There's a blessing for honoring your parents. So children at a very early age begin to experience understanding and some teaching and awareness of what life is all about. You have parents. You respect your parents. You're told to obey your parents. When they tell you to do something, you obey your parents. You learn there's a God, especially a parent that takes their children to a church, have a faith in God that shapes their mind and their thinking and their awareness of the world and what's going on, what's it all about. Again, they'll make their own decision. You're not forcing a future decision on them. You're directing them as is your responsibility. You have to feed and clothe and shelter them, and you should give them direction in life. How to sort through life starts at a very early age. Certain principles and ideas. So respecting authority. Children learn that because they have parents. So often today, I think we see in the popular society, kids are in charge. The kids are running the show, and the adults are all kind of maneuvering around whatever the kids decide to do. Often in the movies, it's that way. The kids are the bright ones. They have all the wisdom. They kind of roll their eyes at dad and mom, and oh, dad this, and mom, you got to do it that way. And it's kind of, well, if we just let the kids lead, everything will be great. They seem to know so much more. Often that's the sense of what's in movies. The kids know more. Well, the children learn personal development as they begin to grow from very early age, as they're able to understand. Personal development, avoiding certain bad habits. Now, nobody's going to have a perfect child, and that can be a mistake. We are going to direct and watch and teach and have this perfect individual. That doesn't happen. It's not realistic to anticipate that. Have everything perfect that they do. That's too much pressure on anybody. How many of us are perfect? That doesn't mean we don't have the right kind of children. So the children learn along the way as they're growing. They learn manners, don't they? They learn basic manners, maybe manners at the table or elsewhere. They learn to clean up your mess. When you're done with your toys, clean them up. Maybe another lesson. They learn to be respectful. That's a part of their development, part of being a godly seed. Nobody does it perfectly. No kids act perfect at all times. But this is the goal. They learn to help with chores. Brush your teeth. Take care of your physical body. Be concerned about that. Learn to be polite. Learn to respect other people's property. No, that's not ours. No, that's the neighbor's. No, we don't throw things on the neighbor's yard. Learn to share. Learn not to litter. Throw trash everywhere. Maybe again learn to limit junk food, candies, and cookies. Some are fine, but there's limitation. We take care of our teeth. I mentioned our teeth and our physical body. Our attitude is important. We learn the commandments. Learn to treat other people the same. All made in God's image. To be thankful. I mean, we could go on with a list. Being thankful, not making fun of other people, not being mean to your brother or sister or somebody else. We don't do that. Apologize. You apologize to them for doing that and saying that. You don't have to win all the time. That can be often the case. You don't have to win everything. Well, Sabbath school helps with some of this as we learn, but that obviously is not the primary responsibility. The church, it's not the church's job to do that. We have an environment that is conducive to that. And there are benefits, because especially here where we're a larger group of people. But none of the church programs are vital for children growing up correctly. That's some of their own choices as they get older, and the teaching that primarily they get at home. Hopefully our programs are a help. Try to help them to be that way. Back in Ephesians chapter 6 once again, now verse 4. As we know, this is a challenge. It all sounds good on paper, but it's very challenging. So fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. Don't aggravate them. Don't be overbearing. Don't be too permissive. Don't provoke your children to wrath. Too much expectation, too early. Bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. Yeah, teach them about God. No, this is what God says to do. We don't do that. In a balanced way, in an environment that they're at ease. They feel that they love their home, where they live, their parents, even though sometimes they're not going to like everything. So parenting is a gift and a skill. Some have a gift more than others. Certainly don't consider myself having any great gift in that respect either. Give my children, they get all the credit as far as the good qualities they have. But it is a gift, it is a skill. Some are better than others. Some have very, very unfortunate childhoods. Very unfortunate family life they grew up in. Well, what do you expect them to be? Experts? It's kind of hard. It wasn't modeled. I didn't experience that. I don't know how to give it to my children. Yeah, it's very, very difficult. Sometimes that's a factor, but we all base it on the same fundamental values and responsibility. So we try to get the kids off to a good start, good foundation, good solid sense of what are they doing in the world as they begin to grow. And then, of course, they become adolescents. And there's more social opportunities. Now they're interacting with other people. They're not right next to mom and dad all the time. Other people, other adults, communicating with people more. Learning about other adults. Sometimes they see other adults aren't the greatest example. That's eye-opening. Or they have an adult that isn't mom or dad, isn't a relative, that has a very positive impact on them. Maybe it's a camp counselor that really helped them. Maybe they could talk to them. Maybe they got just the right advice at the right time. A very important, or a coach. It's happened to a lot of players. Maybe troubled people, and they get into a sport, and the coach helps direct them and gives them guidance, changes their life. It could be a teacher as well, any number of adults. It's not just mom or dad or a relative. That begins to happen at that age. Learn about the opposite sex they're beginning to, at least as they get into 12 and 13 and so on. Making more decisions. Realizing that they need to be a success in school, their studies. It has to do with their future. The young kids don't think about, well, I'm preparing for my career. As you begin to get into high school and your teen year, this will affect the future. It's a time of trying to find your identity. It can be very uncertain. I remember it was for me, and kind of figuring out, well, who am I, and who do I fit with, and what group to identify with, and you're very vulnerable depending on who you attach yourself to or who pulls you in and how you identify with them. And some kids in areas of certain cities, they get pulled in by the gang. Well, there's an identity, and maybe you got a jacket, or maybe you got a tattoo, and you got this little code that you live by, and it's your family. Extremely destructive. They're very vulnerable at that point. And of course, some kids we're seeing at school, they're going to school, and maybe these so-called, the popular crowd, or the sports hero, they start bullying them or maybe ridiculing them and really putting them down. Or what's been happening? They're coming back to school with a gun. They're not going to take it. That's happening more. They feel outcast, they don't fit, they're made fun of, they're weird, they're strange, and they're not in with the crowd. They'll never be in with a good crowd. They'll never be smart. They'll never have money. I don't care. They'll taking it out on people. So finding an identity, how do you compare with others? It can be very insecure. You learn many more lessons, beginning to learn about money. You blow your money. I did that one time. Probably wasn't the wisest thing. We had a teen outing. It was a several-day trip, really great trip. And we were giving the teens, they'd earned money, so we gave them a certain allotment. So I think I'll say it was $30, and I said, look, here's your $30. You got to have this on Monday, and we're going to do this on Tuesday. You got to have something to eat on Wednesday. Don't blow it. Don't blow all your money today. This is all you're getting, whatever it was at the time. Well, we went to some amusement park, and it was just too much for some. It was gone. I mean, all kind of gadget and food and popcorn and this, that, and the other, virtually gone the first day. I should not have done that. I should have given them 10 on Monday, 10 on Tuesday, and 10 on Wednesday. I thought, well, this would be a good lesson. Well, we had to have emergency intervention there financially for a couple so they had something to eat. A little bit. It was just too much. Some maybe never had $30. And here's all these things at the amusement park, and buy this and do that, and video games and this, that, and the other thing. So you learn about money. You learn about look. How important are looks? How important are clothing labels? Can you be different if you have to be? What about peer pressure? So we have the preteen camp, the teen camps that try to help with this, teen studies, regional weekends, socials. All of that's voluntary. Nobody thinks that's vital to anybody's life. My boys went to camp one time when they were growing up in YOU it was at the time. They went one summer camp. I think they had a great time. They didn't want to go again. I wasn't going to force them. And yet some go every year, some go more than one place every year. Love it. Everybody's a little different. For them, that once was enough. It's all voluntary. It's designed to be of help, if it can be of help to families or parents. Then young adults. Now you're getting into young adulthood, maybe older teens and into the out of high school group. As this group will be now kind of out of the teen program, and they're young adults, full young adults. There's more serious spiritual education now that can begin to be contemplated. What's the role of the church in your life? You're old enough to begin to think about that. What's the role of the church in my life? Am I going to be in the church? Is it something I'm due, or I don't need it? What's the role of baptism in your future? What do you think about that? Now you're old enough to think about that. It had nothing to do with mom and dad. This is your thinking. How to date properly, interact with the opposite sex. Relationships are different. Now you'll be living away from home if you go to college. You're there in the dormitory. You're 18, 19, living away from home in a dorm and all these other people around. How do you live? What do you think? What do you do? What's the basis of your life? What's the value of service? What's the vision of the kingdom of God? Is the kingdom of God fit anywhere in that? And then, of course, you're thinking about your career plans. And that's unsettling. I don't know what I want to do. I was that way after I'm not sure what I want to do. Went to Edinburgh State College and was in education. That was fine, but wasn't some burning desire at the time. It changed when I went to Ambassador College. I was much more interested in being successful there and being a successful student. So you're starting your own life in many respects. May still be at home, but you're a young adult. Look at Psalm 119, 105. Psalm 19, 105. The YAT meetings are a little more geared towards kind of this time in life and that transition and that young adulthood. Psalm 119, 105. Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. You have to decide, well, is it a lamp to my feet? Or I don't need any. I know where I want to walk. I don't need a lamp. Sure, I know where I want to go. I can see what the world is. I don't need a lamp guiding me. I don't need a compass. I know what direction. So what about that? Does the Word of God direct your life? So you're old enough to think about that. Mom and Dad can't teach you like the Sabbath school. So those are important transitions. Look at Genesis 37, verse 2. Genesis 37, verse 2. Now here's a young man. In Genesis 37, verse 2, we're talking about the generations of Jacob. Joseph was 17 years old, kind of a young adult. 17-year-old, not a kid anymore, not a newer teen, younger teen. Well, he was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father an evil report. Well, in one sense, he had a conscience. He didn't like what they were doing. It wasn't right. It was not what Dad wanted. Dad, here's what the brothers are doing. Now, we don't know all the circumstances. Sometimes it appears as though Joseph might not have had all the wisdom in the world. Look at verse 5. The following verses. Hey, guys, listen to this. I had a dream, these sheaves, and all of you all bowed down to me. Isn't that amazing? What a dream. I loved it. And they're kind of scowling at him. Well, he made it through that one, but then a little bit later, hey, I had another dream. You want to hear this one? No. Well, let me tell it to you. You and Mom and Dad, the stars and the moon and everything, and again, I'm highlighted in it and bowing down to me, and even Mom and Dad. Isn't that great? Isn't that amazing? What a wonderful dream. Maybe he just couldn't perceive how a human being would process that, what his brothers were thinking. He couldn't perceive it, didn't discern that, what they were thinking about him. He's just a young guy, he's 17, beginning to learn about some of those things. So that's an element of wisdom, the importance of wisdom. Young men and women generally have a lot of energy. They want to get out and do something. Let's make a difference in the world. Let's change some things. They're idealistic. They're optimistic. The world needs that kind of energy and drive and purpose. That of and by itself is fine, but often it's not always with the most wisdom possible. Look what it says in 1 Timothy 4:12. 1 Timothy 4:12. Paul is writing to Timothy, a younger man. Now, he's a lot older than 17, I'm sure. But a younger man. So he says, look, Timothy, don't let anybody despise your youth. Well, why would he say that? Why would anybody despise it in the first place? I mean, the Bible's the Bible. If Timothy's going to read the Bible and say, well, this is what God says, who cares how old you are? Why would they care? His age, whether he's young or not. The truth is the truth. And the Bible's the Bible. And that part is right. I think we all understand that. Sometimes we have older people get up and speak, sometimes younger, and we listen to hear what the truth is. But here he's talking about Timothy, who's going to be leading and shepherding and have some authority over them. And so it's just a fact of life that if somebody's too young, they're just going to assume you're not going to have the understanding how to deal with adults and the complexities and people. You don't have the experience. So as soon as he showed up, well, what this youngster is going to direct all? We're twice his age. He could have been my grandson, some would be saying. So it's simply a fact of life. Paul said, don't let that happen. Don't let them do that. You can set an example to them in your conduct, your charity, your spirit, and they'll grow to have more confidence. But you're kind of young, so they're going to look at that because life produces experience. And that's needed to understand, like Joseph just didn't quite understand how this is going to sound to his brothers. Might have been good to say, Dad, I had this dream. You think I ought to tell my brothers? Don't say anything to them, Joseph. I don't advise you tell them that. You just don't have that. That's why they marveled at Jesus at age 12. That no 12-year-old talks like this. No 12-year-old has a grasp of some of the deeper things out of the Scriptures like this kid. I couldn't believe it. Talking to doctors of the law. He was amazing. Well, obviously, unusual child. Well, two teachers were once applying for the same vice principal position at a high school. One had been teaching a total of 8 years, and the other a total of 20 years. Everyone expected the teacher with the greater experience to obviously get the job, but when the decision was made, it was the person with 8 years teaching who was chosen. The teacher overlooked for the job complained bitterly. I've got 20 years experience, to her 8. What's going on? I'm vastly more qualified. Well, the school board's reply went like this: "Yes, sir, you do have 20 years teaching to her 8, but where she has 8 years experience, you have 1 year's experience repeated 20 times. Must have been a little track record there. Must have been a little history. Just wasn't, he had been around, but he just was not using good judgment, making good decisions. In other words, growing old is inevitable. You can't stop it. Growing up is optional. You're going to grow old, but you may not grow up. So the one that had the 8 years experience just seemed to have a grasp of the teaching and the knack with the kids, and the one around 20 years, it's kind of, we've all seen people, he or she just never grows up. They never grow up. Or he or she never grew up. For whatever reason that's said. Yeah, that's possible. It doesn't come automatically. If you've got a right foundation, you're building your life on that, you grow in wisdom. It'll happen. But not if you're confused about life. You have to have a foundation. Let's go to Daniel chapter 1. Daniel 1. What's this experience all about? Not easy. Pretty complicated. Difficult as parents. Guiding, directing children, teaching them the right way, giving them space to be themselves, and allowed to make some mistakes, but yet not tolerating anything that we shouldn't, and judging all of that, and dealing with the personalities and the development and the emotions, and putting that all together is not easy for children. But it has a great purpose. Well, here we have in Daniel chapter 1 and verse 8, Daniel purposed in his heart, you know the story, Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Daniel had some standard. He had something that told him, well, I don't want to eat that stuff. That isn't what God tells us to eat, and I already know that's not going to be good. He had some kind of standard that guided his life, that he was willing to step out in that way. Instead of him and the others said, Daniel, don't say anything. Eat it. Just go ahead and eat it. Well, he was convicted enough. In this case, he felt like, no, we're not going to do that. We'll be better off. So there's a conviction. He understood how that fit into the bigger picture. He, of course, was the leader of the group. But look at Daniel chapter 3, verse 16 through 18. Really a remarkable response. Remarkable. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, this is Daniel 3:16 through 18. Well, the king, of course, said, you're going to be thrown into the fiery furnace if you don't, follow our directives and bow down and so on. So they answered and said unto the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we're not careful to answer you in this matter. And then he said, basically, what are you going to do? Well, we don't need a couple weeks and we'll get back to you. Give us a month, we'll get back to you on this one. We don't have to take a lot of time. It's a clear choice. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, he's able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. He'll deliver us out of your hand. It's in his hands. Give it to him. That's our choice. If he decides not to, be it known unto you, O king, we're not going to serve your gods. It's too contrary. It's too much of a contradiction to what we're about, what our life is about. Can't do that. Can't worship that image you've set up. Well, it takes a lot of conviction. You look over and see this fiery furnace, it's pretty frightening. But they did. Of course, they're outstanding examples in the Scriptures. That's why they're there. Well, one person once wrote and said, there aren't many once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. Once in a lifetime. Those moments when you're plucked from obscurity to take your place on the big stage, the big moment. How many of these big once-in-a-lifetime moments come? Rarely. Those scenarios when the world seems to part like the Red Sea for you to walk through unimpeded to your promised land. That was the moment. that made me who I am. I'm sure that happens, but they haven't happened to me yet, and I'm not sure that they can rely on them, that you can rely on them if you want to be successful. Instead, we have multiple times a day opportunity. Yeah, that's the daily things, really. Not this once in a lifetime, wait till this chance comes my way. Those chances to engage with the people around us, those moments when we have to do the grunt work required to achieve our goals, those obstacles that when we must climb over, get stronger, more resilient as we go. Those choices when we say no to the easy, short-term option so that we can say yes to the less appealing, but ultimately more productive, long-term option. That's the opportunities, those daily things, the smaller things. That's what it takes. Not once or twice, but over and over again, every single day. Yeah, that's the life. Give us this day our daily bread. Don't worry about 2 days from today. You've got plenty of decisions today. That's your issue today. But tomorrow, take care of tomorrow. You can worry about tomorrow morning. Then you'll make decisions for tomorrow. That's the best approach to life. But you have to have a foundation. No big-time windfall lottery or opportunity or life-changing break. They just don't happen. Here's one more illustration here. A wise woman who was traveling in the mountains found a precious stone in the stream. The next day she met another traveler who was hungry, and the wise woman opened her bag to share some food with this individual that was hungry. Well, the hungry traveler saw that precious stone and asked the woman to give it to him. And she gave it to him without hesitating. Well, the traveler left, rejoicing in his good fortune. He knew the stone was worth enough to give him security for a lifetime. But a few days later, he came back to return the stone to the wise woman. He said, I've been thinking. I know how valuable the stone is, but I give it back in the hope that you can give me something even more precious. Give me what you have within you that enabled you to give me something more precious. Give me what you have within you that enabled you to give me that stone. What was that about you? That I asked for the stone and you gave it to me. Give me that. Never mind, I don't want the money. What do you have in you? That's what I want. That's what I need. What makes you think the way you do? What makes you tick? Why do you do those things? Why do you live that way? Why do you act that way? Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 5, Deuteronomy 4:5. Begin to wrap up some thoughts. Deuteronomy 4, verse 5 through 8. Here's the exact same thing that God told ancient Israel. That was the design for them among the nations. God worked within a nation. He presented the nation to the world. They were to then model that covenant. God works, within a church. It's a spiritual body. It's Holy Spirits and individuals. So Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 5, Behold, I've taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do so in the land where you go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom. That's where it begins with, the fear of the Lord. That's your wisdom. What makes you different? Your understanding in the sight of all these other nations. They'll hear about these statutes and say, well, surely this is a great and wise and understanding people. There's something about those people, something about their society, something about their families, or something about their community. It's the way it was supposed to be. For what nation is there so great who has God so close to them as God, the Lord God is in all the things we call upon him for? What nation so great that has statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law, which is set before you today? What is it about these people? Why are they different? Why do they think the way they do? Something special about them. You can see it. You can see it in their behavior and in what they are. There's always been something special about America as a country. Everybody knows that. Something special. Everybody recognizes that around the world. It's not because the American people are inherently so much different or better than other people. That's not the case at all, even by ourselves. It's because number one, a free society. Many people came from countries to the United. They didn't know what freedom was. Here, you're in a free society. If you buy property, nobody can take that property from you. Go where you want to go. Where do you want to live? Go there. Live there. Free society. The personal liberties, as I mentioned. The rule of law. Never been a place like it. The people rule through law. The rulers are at the pleasure of the citizens. Who ever heard of such a thing? And fundamentally, the Judeo-Christian values. The fundamental values that helped make America what it was. American people, what they are. Now, we know about the Alex de Tocqueville democracy in America and the work that his analyzing of America and traveling and looking and seeing, analyzing this new country and the democracy and what makes it tick. Why is it the way it is? Well, it's those freedoms, the rule of law, the unique Constitution, but it's something else. He said, not until I went into the churches of America and heard her pulpits aflame with righteousness, righteous living. Not until I heard that did I really understand the secret of her genius and power. From where does it emanate? Well, it's the soil. No. Well, it's those people. No, not the people. It's the clean air in the mountain. No, it's not that. It's all the resources. No, not that either. Then I understood the secret of that genius and power. America is great because she's good. It's a good people overall. We're not barbarians. America is great because she's good. And if America ever ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. Well, what do you know? And that's what we're trying to decide what we are now. What's the foundation of our greatness? The military or economy? What is it? I don't think we see that. Who did the end of World War II, as the Allies were surrounding Berlin, and you had the Americans coming, I think, from the West, and of course the Russians. Who did the Germans run towards? Let's run towards the Russians. We'll be safe there. No, they're heading towards the American lines. They'd be treated humanely, for the most part. They'd be treated humanely. There's a different foundation, a different attitude. It wasn't because of goodness of and by ourselves. It was a foundation. There was a certain foundation about being good. It came from the Bible, the churches, Christianity. Doesn't mean there weren't atrocities and all of that. I think we understand that. But there's a fundamental, like de Tocqueville said. Well, let's wrap up, begin some thoughts here. Psalm 71, verse 17. Psalm 71, verse 17. Oh God, you've taught me from my youth. That's what we want all of the children to say when they get older. I've been taught about the right spiritual values and truths since I was a child. You've taught me from my youth, and hitherto have I declared your wondrous works. And I can tell people about what difference I think that's made in my life. Verse 5 of the same Psalm 71. For you are my hope, O Lord God. You are my trust from my youth. Materialism's not my God, and fame and fortune and all that. It's not God. the God of the Bible. Finally, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 1. Ecclesiastes 12:1. Well, after that very philosophical look at life in the book of Ecclesiastes and what's vain and what isn't, now finally chapter 12, verse 1. So remember your Creator during your youth. Otherwise, troublesome days will come and years will creep up on you when you'll say, I don't find any pleasure. In other words, I'm so old, I hardly enjoy life anymore. And you can read through the rest of that chapter about all the experiences of growing old. You can't hear very well. Your teeth are going. You can't enjoy food and all the rest. Days will come when you really don't find any pleasure in life because it's maybe nearing the end of that. Or the Living Bible has it, don't let the excitement of youth cause you to forget your Creator. Well, that's where most of the youth are running off to the gadgets and the fun and the excitement, the pleasures, the experiences, and then when that plays out, now what do we do? Well, maybe drugs or some other thrill-seeking. Well, it's rare to find a young person who can turn his or her back on all that worldliness has to offer. A rare individual. And say, I don't want that. That's not guiding me. Thrills and fun. What's popular. It's a rare individual. Especially when they get out on their own. Maybe leave home. Maybe they're off to college somewhere. Or wherever. But those choices come. Everybody has to face them. Well, this is what God offers our youth. A little bit of what we covered here today. Some of what we try to capture in our church programs and also what all of you do in your own home as well. This is what God has to offer our youth. This is the way to become a godly seed.